It didn't unfold like a traditional action film. Ronin felt more like a slow-burning fever dream, a maze of shifting allegiances, cryptic motives, and cold precision. It was never meant to be loud. It was meant to slip under your skin. In an age-chasing CGI spectacle, Ronin went in the opposite direction. It embraced grit, silence, and distrust. John Frankenheimer didn't just direct this film, he engineered it like a weapon. Every frame calibrated, every line of dialogue sharpened. He cast Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, and a roster of actors with haunted faces and guarded tones, then fed them a story that withheld more than it revealed. Pages of the script were kept hidden, the cast operated under half-truths, and what emerged was a thriller that never quite tells you who's lying or why. This wasn't about saving the world, it was about surviving the next hour. No hero speeches, no sentimental flashbacks, just ex-operatives chasing a briefcase whose contents remain a mystery not just to the audience, but to the people dying to possess it. In place of exposition, Ronin gave us stares, misdirection, and stillness. In place of moral clarity, it offered cold pragmatism and deeper questions. Loyalty to whom? For what? Does loyalty mean anything if you're paid to sell it? Decades later, the film still pulses with quiet menace. It doesn't scream for attention. It waits, observes, and lets you wander deeper into its cold fog of memory and motive. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Ronin, 1998. Fact 1. A case without answers or purpose. The most sought-after object in Ronin is also its most elusive. The briefcase passed between hands, shielded by bullets, and fought over with deadly intent is never opened, never explained. Its contents are left to speculation, which has become a favorite pastime among fans. A nuclear device, spy intel, blackmail material. The truth? There was never an answer. Director John Frankenheimer made a deliberate choice. The case would remain a cipher. It existed not to contain something valuable, but to provoke motion, betrayal, and obsession. Even the cast was denied any backstory about it. De Niro once admitted he had no idea what his character was chasing, and that uncertainty suited him. What makes it even more unsettling is how seriously the characters treat it. They risk everything for something they can't name. The object becomes abstract, a stand-in for mission, for meaning, for something to do. And that's the deeper commentary. These operatives, trained to serve causes and governments, are now freelancers wandering the gray. The case becomes an excuse, a destination with no map, an anchor that doesn't hold. So while audiences debated its contents for years, the real twist might be that the briefcase never represented anything but momentum, because when loyalty dissolves, movement is the only thing left to chase. Fact 2. De Niro treated the role like fieldwork. Robert De Niro didn't just step into the shoes of a former intelligence operative, he immersed himself in the discipline. Before the cameras rolled, he trained extensively with tactical experts and military advisors. His mission wasn't to act like a covert agent, it was to move, think, and respond like one. Every movement in the film was calculated. His weapon handling, footwork, and even eye-line checks followed actual CIA and military protocols. In one scene, when asked to take cover and fire blindly, De Niro refused, explaining that no trained operative would ever do so without identifying a clear line of fire. Frankenheimer sided with him. The stunt was re-blocked. Even in car sequences, De Niro insisted on authenticity. He wanted real motion, not faked reactions in front of a green screen. When necessary, he ceded control to professionals, but not until he understood exactly how the car would respond. This obsessive approach paid off. Veterans who watched Ronin praised the film's authenticity not just in action, but in restraint. De Niro never dramatized a shot or flinched for effect. He executed with precision. Ironically, the most believable spy in the film wasn't based on a real one. He simply prepared like the job was real. Fact 3. The actors were kept in the dark on purpose. Paranoia isn't just a theme in Ronin, it was part of the production. Director John Frankenheimer kept the cast on a need-to-know basis. They received pages late, scenes shifted unexpectedly, and entire arcs were hidden until the last minute. It wasn't mismanagement, it was method. Frankenheimer believed that genuine tension came from uncertainty. He wanted the actors to second-guess motives, not just their characters, but their colleagues. As a result, no one had the full picture. Jean Reno didn't know whether his character would survive the final act until days before shooting it. Natasha McElhone was told conflicting things about her role's loyalty, and Stellan Skarsgård thought he was playing a noble technician, until a rewritten scene made him a traitor. This creative fog crept into the performances. Characters rarely speak in absolutes. Their glances, hesitations, and half-answers reflect the real confusion the actors were working through. What resulted wasn't improvisation, it was engineered unease. The performances didn't mimic suspicion, they embodied it. Because in Ronin, the most dangerous weapon wasn't a gun. It was not knowing who or what you were standing next to. Fact 4. The car chases were filmed like real escapes. Few films have captured vehicular chaos with the same brutal elegance as Ronin. Its car chases, particularly through the twisting arteries of Paris, are now legendary. But what many viewers don't realize is that these scenes were executed without visual effects. No green screen, no digital augmentation, just real cars, real streets, and real speed. John Frankenheimer, a former racing enthusiast, approached the chases like live events. Streets were only partially blocked off, meaning background traffic often included unaware civilians. Over 300 professional drivers were employed, many of them rally-trained, and were told to drive as if you weren't being filmed. One of the boldest maneuvers, driving full throttle in reverse through narrow streets, was orchestrated using custom-modified vehicle. In some cases, the cars were rigged so the actual driver could steer from a hidden cockpit, while the actor sat motionless up front. This commitment to realism wasn't just a technical flex. It created tension that no post-production trick could replicate. You feel the weight of the vehicles, the unpredictability of each swerve, the breathless calculation of survival. And in a cinematic landscape now bloated with digital spectacle, Ronin remains a reminder. True danger doesn't blink. It barrels toward you on real asphalt. Fact 5. A legendary screenwriter vanished from the credits. Behind the scenes, Ronin bore the fingerprints of one of the most distinctive writers of the 20th century, David Mamet. Known for his razor-sharp dialogue and dense moral ambiguity, Mamet was brought in to revise the original script by J.D. Zeik. He reworked character motivations, rewrote dialogue, and infused the film with a simmering distrust. But when the Writers Guild denied him sole credit, insisting on a shared byline, Mamet chose to disappear, opting for the pseudonym Richard Weiss instead. Frankenheimer later admitted that much of the film's psychological complexity came from Mamet's pen. The clipped exchanges, the lack of exposition, the moral uncertainty, all hallmarks of his influence. Strangely, Mamet's decision to retreat from credit mirrored the film's theme. People operating in shadows, shaping outcomes, but never claiming them. Just like the characters in Ronin, the man who altered the game left without a trace. Fact 6. The title speaks volumes, without ever explaining itself. Ronin is a title heavy with implication. In feudal Japan, a Ronin was a samurai without a master, disgraced, wandering, unclaimed. Yet the film never defines the term. No character utters it. No scene explains it. And that's intentional. Frankenheimer structured the entire narrative around that concept. Each operative in the film is cast adrift, once loyal to institutions, now driven by contract, instinct, or regret. The story doesn't follow a traditional arc. It meanders, sidesteps, doubles back like a warrior, unsure whether he's chasing honor or simply routine. Even the briefcase, the supposed mission, is a placeholder. What truly matters is how each character navigates the absence of purpose. De Niro's calm calculation, Reno's unwavering sense of ethics, Skarsgård's cold betrayal. They're all responses to the same void. The genius of the title is that it never needs to be explained. It hovers, and in its silence, it forces you to interpret everything else differently. Because once you understand what a Ronin is, every choice in the film becomes something else entirely. Fact 7. Jean Reno maintained his distance off-camera by design. While Jean Reno delivered one of his most grounded performances in Ronin, his approach behind the scenes was anything but casual. Throughout filming, Reno avoided speaking English with cast and crew, even though he was perfectly fluent. It wasn't stubbornness. It was deliberate strategy. Reno wanted to preserve the sense of quiet isolation that defined Vincent, his character. By remaining linguistically apart, he reinforced an emotional barrier between himself and the rest of the ensemble, particularly with De Niro. Their bond on screen had to be earned, not assumed. The language divide created subtle tension. During group scenes, Reno would often wait an extra beat before responding, making his timing feel both deliberate and unpredictable. It wasn't performance, it was behavioral design. And that separation paid off. Vincent feels different from the others, not detached, but observed, like a man fluent in multiple worlds, yet fully loyal to none. Ironically, the few moments where Reno breaks that silence in the film offering comfort or humor carry enormous weight. They feel earned, not scripted. Because in a story full of shadows, Vincent's silence became one of the clearest signals. Fact 8. A sniper and some pigeons changed the tone of the film. One of Ronin's eeriest sequences is almost incidental, a lone gunman perched above a square, scoping both birds and civilians. The scene is brief, wordless, almost meditative, and it wasn't even in the original script. Frankenheimer added it late in production, inspired by a real wartime account of a sniper who used pigeons for target calibration before engaging real targets. The image haunted him, violence disguised as stillness. The production scrambled to build the bell tower set, and the actor playing the sniper was given almost no instruction. "Don't act," Frankenheimer told him. "Just breathe." The pigeons were not trained. Their erratic, spontaneous flight added unpredictability to every take. What emerges is a moment of pure unease, a prelude to violence that never fully arrives, a weapon that watches but does not move. And in many ways, that one scene reframes the entire film. It isn't about the shot, it's about the man waiting to take it, and what it means when nothing happens yet. Fact 9. Filming chronologically was an act of caution, not creativity. While most films shoot scenes out of order to save time and budget, Ronin did the opposite. Frankenheimer insisted on filming much of the story in chronological sequence, not to help actors live the story, but because the script was in constant flux. With Mamet rewriting lines and character arcs being tweaked mid-production, Frankenheimer needed flexibility. Shooting in order allowed him to pivot, adjust performances, and reorient tone without creating inconsistencies. The unintended benefit? The actors began to mirror their characters' unraveling. As the story progressed, so did their fatigue, wariness, and guarded trust. Performances became less about control and more about navigating confusion, just like the operatives they played. By the time the film reached its climax, the cast wasn't pretending to be worn down. They were. In the end, what began as a pragmatic solution became a narrative advantage. And in a story defined by unpredictability, filming in order might have been the one thing keeping it all from falling apart. Fact 10. Some of the best lines were written in the moment. Not everything in Ronin was planned. Some of its most memorable lines, terse, cryptic, precise, weren't in the original drafts. They came from last-minute rewrites, on-set inspiration, or direct input from De Niro and Frankenheimer. These weren't ad-libbed. They were tactical strikes. One standout: "Whenever there's any doubt, there is no doubt." It's a line audiences quote endlessly, but it wasn't in the script. Frankenheimer borrowed it from a real CIA contact, and De Niro immediately saw its weight. It fit the character, the world, the film's entire logic of uncertainty. This fluidity wasn't accidental. The production operated on instinct and discipline. If a line felt too polished, too rehearsed, it was cut. Dialogue was sharpened for function, not flourish. The strange result is that Ronin's most quotable moments are uncredited. They came from a process that valued tone and authenticity over authorship. So while the screenplay was a patchwork of writers and rewrites, the voice of the film, calm, controlled, lethal, emerged organically. Built, not declared. Fact 11. McElhone played a role no one defined. Natasha McElhone's performance as Deirdre calculated, distant, unreadable, wasn't born from clarity. It was shaped by confusion. Throughout production, she received shifting notes about her character's motives. Some days, she was a true believer. Other days, a manipulator. The truth was never locked down. Frankenheimer reportedly gave her direction in fragments. "Hold back here," or "You're hiding something, but I won't tell you what." The result was a performance built on controlled ambiguity. Every word from McElhone sounds half-meant. Every glance suggests a concealed intention. Interestingly, even within the production, no one agreed on who Deirdre really was. Was she loyal to a cause? Playing everyone? Caught in over her head? The lack of a fixed arc made her portrayal haunting like a face behind frosted glass. Years later, McElhone admitted she never fully understood Deirdre, and that made her real. Because in the world of Ronin, clarity isn't a luxury, it's a liability. Fact 12. Real spies were hired to haunt the background. The sharp-eyed extras in Ronin, men in coats, unblinking drivers, silent passers-by weren't always actors. Frankenheimer brought in actual former intelligence personnel to fill the periphery, retired French operatives, ex-field techs, surveillance experts. They blended into the frame like ghosts. Why? Because they moved differently. They scanned environments without drawing attention. They didn't fidget, didn't posture. They were trained to be unnoticed, and that's exactly what Frankenheimer wanted. One story from the set. An ex-operative approached Jean Reno and corrected the way he held his pistol. "Too theatrical," he said. Reno adjusted. That moment stuck with the actor for the rest of the shoot. These background figures never spoke a line, never took credit, but their presence shaped the atmosphere, turning ordinary crowd shots into scenes that felt observed. In a film about men who live in shadows, it's fitting that some of the most authentic ones were never even in the spotlight. Fact 13. A shootout on ice that was never meant to happen. The chilling sequence at the ice rink, gunfire erupting near children, blood-staining white ice, was never part of the original plan. Initially conceived as a standard alleyway confrontation, the scene was rewritten just days before filming. Frankenheimer wanted discomfort, not just action. He wanted beauty interrupted. The new setting was risky. Ice reflects light unpredictably. Camera movement is restricted. Safety becomes a logistical nightmare. Still, the crew pivoted, re-choreographed the shootout, and worked through the cold. What they captured was a moment of pure disruption. The violence doesn't feel stylized, it feels intrusive. The echo of gunshots bouncing off the rink's walls hits harder because of what surrounds it. Innocent faces, harmless routines, a place built for play. Some of the extras, especially children, weren't told the full context. When blanks fired, some screamed or cried instinctively. The camera kept rolling. Jean Reno was reportedly seen calming one of them between takes, his gun still holstered. It's a moment where genre bends towards something colder, not spectacle, but intrusion. Fact 14. Sean Bean's exit was designed to humiliate. Spence, played by Sean Bean, is one of the first characters to be cut from the mission, and he's discarded brutally. His exit feels abrupt, even unnecessary. That wasn't a narrative accident. It was a calculated choice. Originally, Spence had a larger role. Additional scenes showed him attempting redemption, perhaps even switching sides. But Frankenheimer felt the subplot dragged the story into cliché. He wanted to make a statement. In this world, there are no second chances. The confrontation where De Niro exposes Spence's incompetence was largely improvised. De Niro reportedly helped craft the dialogue, drawing from real-life tactical flaws he'd learned in training. Bean wasn't warned how forceful the moment would be. His reaction, humiliation, retreat, silence is not acting. It's raw response. His arc was cut in real time. The camera just caught it. In Ronin, weakness isn't punished with violence. It's met with quiet dismissal. And somehow, that lands harder. Fact 15. Surveillance tactics were used to film a conversation. In one quiet scene, two characters sit in a cafe, barely speaking. It plays like any standard dialogue moment until you look closer. The angles are distant. The background is dense. The audio feels hushed. That's because the scene was filmed like a surveillance op. Frankenheimer had cameras placed across the street, behind windows, and on nearby rooftops. Long lenses, no dolly tracks, minimal crew presence. The goal was to watch the actors, not stage them. Extras were unaware of specific blocking. Conversations happened organically. Hidden microphones were planted under tables and in jackets. What ended up on screen was a mix of scripted lines and real-world ambient noise. The result? An unsettling sense of exposure. We're not invited into the scene we're eavesdropping. The characters are being observed, and so are we. In a film built on mistrust, even how it's shot reinforces the theme. You're never really alone, especially when you think you are. Fact 16. The man behind the wheel was a woman in disguise. In one of Ronin's most breathtaking moments, a car hurtles backward through traffic at impossible speed, dodging, weaving, surviving. The camera catches De Niro behind the wheel, eyes locked, hands steady. But in reality, that wasn't him, and it wasn't a man. The stunt was performed by a female rally driver from France, brought in when the original stunt coordinator struggled to execute the reverse chase cleanly. She was fitted with a black wig, dressed in De Niro's costume, and dropped into a custom-rigged car that allowed for full-speed reverse driving. She nailed the take in one shot. To preserve the illusion, cameras were angled to obscure her face, and editing was used sparingly to maintain continuity. Most audiences, and even many fans, never realized the swap. She received no screen credit, no interview mentions, just a quiet nod from the stunt team and a lasting moment of uncredited brilliance. The irony is sharp. In a film about hidden identities and unsung skill, one of its boldest maneuvers was pulled off by someone meant to remain unseen. Fact 17. a collapse on set that might have been tactical. Late into production, with costs rising and deadlines tightening, the studio began applying pressure. Cut scenes, reduce days, shorten the third act. Frankenheimer resisted. And then, one morning, he collapsed on set. Production stopped. Medical personnel were brought in. The crew waited. 2 days later, he returned, subdued but focused. The studio backed off. The edits were shelved. Filming resumed on his term. To this day, no one agrees on what happened. Some say it was genuine exhaustion. Others whisper that it was a calculated pause, a final card played by a director unwilling to compromise his film. Whatever the truth, it worked. Ronin retained its full structure, including several sequences that would have been trimmed to fit runtime restrictions. And Frankenheimer, a man who spent his life navigating systems, pulled off one last misdirection. Sometimes, the only way to win is to make them think you're already losing. Fact 18. A quiet ending that refuses to explain itself. The final scene in Ronin doesn't resolve, it evaporates. Sam and Vincent sit in a dim cafe. No score, no answers, just a few words, a nod, and a silent departure. There's no chase, no closure, just the sense that the mission, whatever it was, isn't really over. It's just paused. Frankenheimer rejected every version of a more conventional ending. He scrapped drafts that brought back Deirdre. He dismissed versions with betrayals, shootouts, or redemption. What he wanted instead was fatigue, stillness, the sensation of unfinished business. De Niro and Reno reportedly shot the scene multiple times with different emotions. In one take, they smiled. In another, they argued what ended up on screen was neutral, ambiguous, almost numb. It's the kind of ending that lingers not because it's powerful, but because it denies satisfaction. You don't know what comes next, neither do they. And in that uncertainty, Ronin finds its final truth, that some missions never really end. They just dissolve into the quiet. Fact 19. The composer was asked to erase half his work. When Elliot Camiro delivered his original score for Ronin, it was exactly what you'd expect for a high-tension spy thriller. Bold, rhythmic, layered with tension. But Frankenheimer listened, then asked for silence. The director wanted restraint. He felt the music was telling the audience too much, forcing emotion where ambiguity should live. Camiro went back to the studio and stripped away layers. Then he stripped again. Whole sections were replaced with minimalistic cues, single notes, held tones, long silences. In the final cut, music disappears for entire scenes. Gunfights unfold without percussion. Confrontations pass in near silence. The result is unnerving. Without musical direction, the viewer is left to interpret tension on their own. The film's final scene offers the most haunting example. Two men part ways, and the music doesn't swell, it drifts, barely audible, a breath rather than a theme. By reducing the score to a whisper, Frankenheimer ensured the story stayed cold, clinical, observed. The music didn't lead, it followed quietly, from a distance. Fact 20. The opening titles were built from ink and absence. From its first frames, Ronin tells you what kind of film it will be. The title sequence doesn't explode onto the screen, it seeps in. Dark brushstrokes, shadowed textures, empty space. The visuals weren't created using digital tools. They were inspired by traditional Japanese sumi-e ink painting art that values restraint, suggestion, and negative space. Frankenheimer asked the designers to evoke a feeling of memory, like something half-remembered, never resolved. There are no names, no establishing shots, no glimpses of characters, just movement, blackness, chasing light, like ghosts circling the edges of story. The metaphor is immediate. These are characters without anchors, mercenaries whose histories are lost. Their presence is defined more by what's missing than what's shown. And the brilliance of the sequence lies in its contradiction. It's a loud declaration made in silence, an introduction that withholds instead of explain. In a genre obsessed with information, Ronin begins with omission, and in doing so, it warns you, nothing here will be simple. Bonus fact, they called it the Dogs Without Shadows. On set, Ronin was often referred to by a name that never appeared in any official document, the Dogs Without Shadows. It was a phrase whispered among crew members, scribbled on call sheets, and even printed on some of the early equipment labels. At first glance, it seemed like a code word to protect the production. But over time, it became something else. Frankenheimer reportedly coined the term after describing the characters as trained predators with no one left to hunt for. He saw them as men stripped of allegiance not just professionally, but morally. They had instincts, tactics, muscle memory, but no cause, no master, no direction. The phrase caught on. Crew members began using it seriously. Actors, 2. One assistant director recalled that even the walkie-talkie channels were nicknamed Shadowline during production. The name never made it into marketing, it was never printed on posters, but it lingered, and when you rewatch Ronin with that phrase in mind, it sticks. Every glance, every silence, every decision made in the absence of meaning, because that's what Ronin truly is, not a mission story, not a spy film, not even a morality play. It's a portrait of professionals moving without purpose, dogs without shadows, chasing shapes they'll never catch. Was Ronin a story about redemption, or just highly trained men trying to outrun irrelevance? What do you think the briefcase symbolized, if anything at all? Leave a comment below with the fact that challenged your view of the film and the one detail you think we missed. And if there's another film lost in silence and shadows, tell us where to look next.